Books, books. I like books. I'm gonna read them all.
Hi readers, Chris here. Welcome to my channel where I review fantasy, Stephen King, all sorts of books, and today I'm going to be doing the mid-year Freakout tag. Yes, I know most people have already done this one, but I mean, July just started, so I'm really not that late. But I'm gonna jump into it and go through all the prompts about all the books that I've read so far this year. Prompt number 1 is best book you've read so far this year. Of course, the hardest one is the first one. I've read a lot of good books this year, but what I decided to pick for this one is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I absolutely loved this book. If you saw my review, this book is damn near perfect, and I do not say that very often. But all the things that I love in books, strong world building, good characters, a fun plot, this book has all of those things. Not only does it have them all, but it does them all well, which is really rare. Sometimes you get like 2 out of the 3. This one has all 3. I don't know if it's gonna be my favorite of the whole year, but it is definitely in the running. Prompt number 2 is best sequel you've read so far this year, and this one was actually easy. This one is Winter of the Witch by Katherine Arden. This is the 3rd and final book in her Winter Night trilogy. I mean, I don't know if this counts as a sequel because it's not the 2nd book, but I'm saying that it does. I absolutely love this book. Love this book. This is an amazing end to this trilogy. Again, all the things I just said about Six of Crows, world building, characters, and plot. And this one actually made me emotional for like so many different reasons. This book definitely helped cement that the Winter Night trilogy is one of my favorite adult fantasy series of all time. I'll have to do a top 10 list about that someday, but for today, I'm gonna move on to the next prompt. Prompt number 3 is new release you haven't read yet, but you want to. And I just got this new release like a week or 2 ago, and that is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. I read The Poppy Wars by R.F. Kuang, and then I read Babel earlier this year, and I have literally loved everything that she's written so far. So when I heard about Yellowface, I was like, I really need to read this. I also know that Kirsten over at Reading Nymph has been reading this one recently and really enjoying it. So when I saw this at the bookstore, I was like, I need to pick this up. So this book, it just came out recently and I still need to read it. Definitely am going to read it soon. Prompt number 4 is most anticipated book release for the second half of the year. To me, there is no question about which book I am most excited for, and that is Cassiel's Servant by Jacqueline Carey. This book comes out in August, and I am so looking forward to it. Jacqueline Carey, this is the first book she's put out in a number of years, so I haven't heard her name talked a lot about on like BookTube and Bookstagram, but she's most well known for Cassiel's Dart, that series. She has a ton of other books. She's one of my absolute favorite authors of all time, and I am so excited for this book. So excited. Like, the day it comes out, I will be at the bookstore in line. I'm sure there probably won't be a line because that doesn't really happen anymore, but I will be there to get my copy so I can start reading it right away. I am so excited about this one. Prompt number 5 is biggest disappointment, and unfortunately, I'm gonna have to go with Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. I was really looking forward to this one. I mean, first of all, I know the glare is kind of bad, but this book is just gorgeous. It's such a pretty book. I enjoyed Caraval. I did have some issues with Caraval, but the first book, the original Caraval book, I really enjoyed. So I was hoping that this new series would fix the things I didn't like about Caraval. Unfortunately, this one was worse. This book just like went off the rails. I thought the characters were not great, not very well developed. I know there are people out there who really love this one, so I feel bad, but unfortunately, this one was a big disappointment for me. And I have the sequel, which I really don't want to read, but I probably will at some point. Prompt number 6 is biggest surprise so far, and for this one, I went with Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. Why is this a surprise? It was a surprise to me because I previously read the Crescent City book, so House of Earth and Blood, House of Sky and Breath, and I had some really big issues with those books. Some really big issues to the point where I was like, I don't think Sarah J. Maas is for me. Like, I don't know if I should read any of her other books because I feel like I'm too old. It's not my thing. But I kept hearing that Throne of Glass was a little bit more YA, so I was like, I found this actually at like a tag sale, so I only paid like $1 or $2 for it, and I was like, let me just give it a chance and see, because I know it's really popular, and I ended up really enjoying it. I was super surprised about how much I enjoyed it. I am so surprised at how much I enjoyed this book, and I'm still reading this series, and I continue to be surprised about how much I like the series. So, Throne of Glass, my biggest surprise for the year so far. Prompt number 7 is favorite new author. I've read a couple new authors, but honestly, none of them have really stood out as being like a favorite, except for one person. And hopefully you're not embarrassed for me calling you out, but I'm going to say Nymeria is one of my new favorite authors of the year. I read her book of poetry, I Bleed Starseeds, earlier in the year, and for someone who self-proclaimed not a big poetry lover, I don't read a lot of poetry, I don't do a lot of stuff with poetry in my life, I absolutely loved her poems. I loved her poems. I did a whole review on it, so Nymeria, if you're watching, you're my favorite new author of the year. Prompt number 8 is newest fictional crush. Now, I'm not one of those readers who's like, oh my god, goo goo gaga over fictional characters, but I will say that there is one particular fictional character who has become a favorite of mine, and that is going to be Hudson from the Crave series. Now, technically, I read Crave and Crush last year, but this book, Covet, which is the 3rd book in the series, this is the book where we really get to learn more about Hudson as a character. And we really get to learn more about him and his relationship with other characters in the series. I'm trying to be vague here. So even though this particular book I don't think is as good as the first two, I think this is a good book for Hudson's character. Hudson is the brother of a vampire duo. There's Jackson and Hudson. They're brothers. They have this long history of fighting each other and betraying each other and backstabbing each other. And of course, they're both in love with the same girl. Think like Damon and Stefan from Vampire Diaries. But Hudson is Hudson is like the Damon of this series. He's the bad boy, but he has the heart of gold, and he's really good for Grace. And yeah, Hudson, if I had to pick someone to be my fictional crush, it would definitely be Hudson. Prompt number 9 is newest favorite character. This one was difficult for me because it's really hard for me to pinpoint a favorite character, especially a new one. Like, I have a lot of favorite characters for series that I've been reading for a while, but I decided at the end of the day to go with Lux Revel from the book Revel. So this is also a debut story, a new author. I got this book a few months ago in one of my Owl Crate book boxes. It's about a young girl in the 1920s. She works at a circus. She's got these really cool powers. And I really like that, I really like the dark turn that this story took. It's very much, I've said this in my review, like a Moulin Rouge type story. So it's very like, it's got this tragic romance. And I really like Lux as a character. I think she's very relatable, where she kind of shows the world one thing, but on the inside she's like suffering from all of this stuff, and she's suffering alone, but she's doing it for her family. And I found Lux to be a very relatable character. I thought she's like a fun character in some ways, and she's got super cool magic, so she's the one that I ended up picking for this prompt. Prompt number 10 is book that made you cry, and there definitely has been more than one this year, but since I already talked about Winter of the Witch, the other book that made me cry is Britt Marie Was Here by Frederick Bachman. This book is very similar to A Man Called Ove, like very similar, except in this one we have an older lady who's kind of, she's not even grumpy, because Ove was like a grumpy old man. Britt Marie isn't grumpy. She's just very particular. And because she's very particular, like it rubs people the wrong way. Like she's the type of old lady that tells you to use a coaster or, you know, to mess up the wood. It's like, she's not wrong what she's saying. It's just most people aren't so like anal retentive like Britt Marie is. But it's a very heartwarming story. It's a found family story. It's a self-discovery story. And oh man, this one had me bawling by the end. So if A Man Called Ove made you cry, this one will probably make you cry too. Prompt number 11 is a book that made you happy, and I honestly wasn't sure what to pick for this one, so I'm just gonna skip it and move on to the next one. Prompt number 12 is most beautiful book that you've gotten or received. And for this one, I picked Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. Got this in an Owl Crate book box, and I know I've showed it off before, but this is the first book from Owl Crate that has not only sprayed edges, but stenciled edges. And I mean, look at that. Look how beautiful that is. Beautiful pink stenciled edges with all of these really cool designs on them. And of course, not just that, but this book has beautiful inside end pages. It has beautiful foil stamps on the hardcover. And it also, as if that wasn't enough, has a reversible dust jacket. So I have never had a book with stenciled edges like this before, so this one was definitely one of the most beautiful books I've gotten this year. And finally, that brings me to the last prompt, prompt 13, and that is, what book do you need to read before the end of the year? And for this prompt, I decided to pick Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. This is the second book in the Stormlight archive. I just recently finished the first one, The Way of Kings, the other month, and that was a 1,000-page book. This is another 1,000-page book, but I want to read it before the end of the year because this is such a big, expansive, epic fantasy. I feel like if I don't continue with it relatively soon, I am not going to remember everything that happened in those 1,000 pages. So definitely want to get to this one before the end of the year. I'm thinking maybe September, but if not September, then October. One of those 2 months, definitely going to add this to my TBR. That is everything for the mid-year Freakout tag. I'm not going to tag anyone to do this because I feel like most people already have, but if you haven't and you want to, please go ahead and do it. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. As always, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not already, please subscribe to my channel for more bookish stuff coming your way soon. All right, everyone, happy reading.